All right, guys, so today in front of me from Broken Barrel Whiskey Company, we have their Heresy Rye and their California Oak. So one of the things that most intrigues me about Broken Barrel Whiskey Company is how they go about finishing their whiskey. Typically, distilleries will, pour their whiskey into a full barrel and finish it that way. Whereas Broken Barrel says, you know what, we're gonna put a little twist on things, and we're gonna put finished staves, break them apart, and put them inside our barrels to go ahead and finish our whiskey. It's something that really, really intrigues me about the way that they do it. And it's actually something I've always wanted to try. These are the first two expressions I've ever tried from Broken Barrel. Definitely excited to get into these guys. So without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so we're going to get started with the Heresy Rise. So this one comes in at 105 proof. Mash bill on this one is 95% rye, 5% malted barley. Now, the oak bill on this one is 40% ex-bourbon barrels, 40% new French oak staves, and 20% sherry cask oak staves. It's aged for a minimum of 2 years in new charred oak, and then it's aged for 30 days with that oak bill that I had stated earlier, the ex-bourbon barrels, the new French oak staves, and the sherry cask oak staves. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. Yeah, so first thing I get is just this little bit of a wine influence, but then there's a ton of citrus that appears there on the nose, a ton of lemon, a ton of orange, but then just like this hint of like a dark side, like a raisin or a plum there further into the glass. Like further away from the glass, I get a lot of sweetness. I get like a lot of vanilla, like a vanilla fudge, a nice kind of rich caramel to it. Yeah, further into the glass is like it's honey. Like citrus, it's a lot of citrus. It's a citrus bomb on the nose. A lot of lemon, a lot of orange, but then there's also this dark side to it. This slight like wine influence. It gives off like a raisin or a plum. And actually, I do pick up a little bit of the rye, like the rye grain. But you can smell that there's some spiciness to it too. That could be some of that. That could be some of that grain. Could be some of that French oak stave that's kind of coming into play too, giving some of that little spicy character, almost like a little bit of a pepper. Definitely, now that I say that, there's definitely some pepper influence into it. It's almost like a mix of a white and a black pepper there. Really like the nose, guys. Let's get into the palate. Cheers. Yeah, so first sip. This is it's a very, very sweet. Very, very sweet whiskey. Nice spice to it though too. So front of the palate came off very sweet. Candy-like sweetness. Middle of the palate, you pick up a punch of that rye spice from it being that 95% rye. Again, all that citrus that I was getting on the nose, I'm definitely getting on the palate. It's a citrus bomb. Tons of lemon, tons of orange. But then again, there's like this unique kind of spiciness, and I've had this before in other whiskeys. I think it comes from that new French oak. I think it offers just such a very unique spice to it. Finish is on the medium side. I do pick up some of that pepper that I was getting on the nose, more of a black pepper onto the palate. Medium finish though, it lasts for a little while. Pretty good first sip, guys. Let's get a second one. Yeah, this is definitely an easy sipper. Again, flavor stayed consistent on that second sip. Tons of like candied vanilla caramel sweetness on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate, again, it has, it kind of maintained that those citrus notes, that lemon and that orange, a big old burst, and then that rye spice. I don't necessarily get the flavor of the rye, the grain itself, which is surprising because it's not aged very long, and it's a 95% rye, but I don't necessarily get the grain flavor. On the nose, I could smell a little bit of graininess, but that mixture of that pepper is kind of sitting there on the middle of the palate. And then right into the back of the finish is just like this little, just a hint of like a raisin. And then it kind of flows through with that pepper. So the influence from the little sherry the sherry staves, I think it has a very mild influence. I think the influence that I get the most would definitely be the new French oak. I think it just offers such a very unique spiciness to it, along with that 95% rye spiciness to it. It has a nice balance of sweet and then spicy at the same time with like a medium finish. Pretty good sipper, guys. Getting the last sip. Cheers. Yeah, so all right, so that last sip changed a little bit. I feel like on that last sip, on the middle of the palate, right into the back of the palate, I started to get a little more of that sherry cask influence. That rye spice, again, is still there, still on the center of the palate. Tons of citrus on this one. This is definitely a citrus bomb. Like a candy like vanilla fudge sweetness, along with some of that caramel sweetness there on the front of the palate. Very sweet to start. But that unique kind of spiciness from, I think, that French oak finishing definitely plays around with the palate in there. And along with like the pepper, you get a little bit of that pepper there on the middle of the palate, and into the finish it kind of flows through, and you get some of that raisin. Definitely a really nice sipper here. I wish it was a little bit hotter. I think like a 115 would be really, really nice for this guy. But the 105, it does offer. I think maybe if this was too hot, I think you would lose some of that sweetness that it has to offer, and I think it would just become a spice bomb. But either way, I'd give this guy, as far as a rating, as far as a score, I think I would give this one a 6.5. I think I think it offers a great balance of sweet, and then those spicy notes to it too, with that medium finish. I would definitely love to see this thing at like the 115 proof range, just to see what it would do. But regardless, a really tasty pour here, guys, from Broken Barrel Whiskey Company. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into their California Oak. Now, this is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey finished with Broken Barrel staves. Comes in at 88 proof. Mash bill on this one is 70% corn, 21% rye, 9% malted barley. And the oak bill on this one is 80% Central Coast Cabernet staves and 20% new French oak staves. So let's go ahead and get into the nose. Yeah, so on this one, you definitely get some of that wine presence on the nose. There's a lot of plum on this one. There's some fig on this one. Definitely some of those darker fruits. And then there's also this really rich caramel sweetness like further into the glass. Along again, some of those darker fruits, some of that plum, a little bit of like fig in there as well. I do pick up like a little bit further into the glass. I do pick up like a little bit of a blackberry note, which is something I don't typically get a lot of, but I do get that further into the glass. Yeah, further away from the glass is more of that sweetness like I had with the Heresy Rye. It's some caramel, some vanilla sweetness in there. Yeah, the dark fruit on the nose here is definitely the dominating aroma on this one. Again, you do get those vanillas and the caramels kind of further away from the glass, but it's just a lot of plum. There's a lot of fig in there, and then there's just a very, very small hint of this almost like a peach. It's like a small hint of orchard fruit, which is a little bit further away from the glass with that vanilla and caramel sweetness. Yeah, interesting nose, guys. Get in the palate. Cheers. Yeah, so like the nose, this one comes off on that darker side. Definitely, there's definitely some plum on this one. Maybe a little bit of maybe a fig, a raisin. Definitely a lot of plum influence on this one. So the spiciness on this one is not really there. It does kind of leave your mouth a little bit silky, but not a lot of burn. Again, it's only coming in at 88 proof, so it's not going to hit you with heat. But I think that that silky kind of mouthfeel kind of makes up for none of that spice. But the flavors, again, the first sip kind of skipped the front of the palate. Middle of the palate is where you start to pick up some of those darker fruits. A lot of that plum, a little bit of honey there. Further into the end of the back of the palate, definitely kind of sweet there on the finish. It's a short finish, short to medium, but a little bit more on the shorter side. I like the dark fruit flavor there though. It kind of like sits there on the middle to the back of the palate. Let's get in the second sip. Yeah, so that sip definitely changed a little bit. A lot of sweetness there. Again, some of that candied sweetness sitting there right on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate is just that plum. And then there's like a little bit of that honey. But then also now into the finish, I pick up like a purple grape. Definitely some purple grape influence there. Going through and into the finish. Again, it's not very spicy. I'm not picking up a lot of rye spice. Little maybe a hint of like lemon there on the side of the palate. Front of the palate again just picked up some of that sweetness, the sweetness from this. But then like what I like about it is kind of the middle to the back of that palate. You pick up some of that plum, little like slight hint of honey, and then further into the back of the palate and into the finish, picking up some of that like some purple grapes. That's again something I don't pick up a lot. Is that like purple grape note? But I definitely pick it up on this one. Definitely has some of those, a lot of Cabernet influence on this one for sure, with it being 80%. Let's get in the last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, I mean, again, with this one, I mean, the flavors that stay consistent with that second sip. Again, a lot of sweetness right up front there. Middle of the palate is middle to the back of the palate's where this one kind of shines through. Again, a lot of plum, a little bit of lemon there on the sides of the palate, kind of like a rich honey, kind of flows in through there. I don't get any of that like really unique spice from the new French oak staves. I was hoping it would some of that unique spiciness will kind of pop up. Now, I'm not really getting that. But then into, like I said, into the the back of the palate and into the finish, a lot of that darker fruit kind of flows through. Again, some of that honey, and then there's some of that purple grape, some purple grapes there that kind of go through and into the finish. For this one, again, this is something I would really, really like to see at a higher proof point. Being an 88 proof, again, it's not hitting you with a ton of heat. But maybe having this one at that 105 proof mark, like the Heresy Rye, or even bringing this guy up into the the 110, the 115 range, I would really like to see how the flavors kind of mingle around and play around with that. That may bring out some of that new French oak spice. But I think with it being such a low proof, I may be missing that a little bit on the palate. This one, I would give, as far as a score for this guy, I would give this one maybe 6.1 for this one. I think it's definitely worth a try at the bar. But again, I would really, really like to see this guy at a higher proof point. Again, that at least a 105 all the way up to like a 115. Because I have a feeling that new French oak spice is hidden, somewhere within this whiskey. It just needs to elevate just a little bit with that proof point. But again, very tasty pour here from Broken Barrel Whiskey Company. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Broken Barrel Whiskey Company and Aaron at Robro Marketing for supplying me with these samples here to review on the channel. Guys, these are both definitely worth checking out. Again, if you guys see anything from Broken Barrel Whiskey Company out at a bar, definitely make sure you give them a try. They are doing some very unique things over there, and it's very intriguing to me. I really like the idea of how they're going about finishing their whiskey. It's something that's just different from what companies and distilleries typically do, and the idea of how they're going about it is just it's so intriguing to me. And Again, I can't thank them enough for supplying me with these samples to review on the channel. So guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You can also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.